What's the dumbest thing someone you know actually believed? When I was 16, I witnessed how a friend of mine convinced a dude that vegans came from a country called Vegania. He even doubled down, claiming that his grandfather was half vegan, and didn't tell him the truth until a week later. To be fair, the guy he was talking was the dumbest person I've met to this day, but still it was impressive. I was 100% convinced Reese Witherspoon was black. For years. I don't know why. Did I confuse her with some other actress? I have no idea. I found out when my roommate invited me to watch some comedy she was in, and I protested that that was not Reese Witherspoon. I was severely laughed at, and I deserved it. My old coworker believed that Forrest Gump was a real person. Her older brother even went to the Navy to follow in his footsteps. I know he was in the Army, but he wanted the Navy because he felt it would make him a better shrimp boat captain. He really did join the Navy, and I'm not sure why. Back in secondary school, a guy, American, in my class honestly believed that the U.S. colonized Britain and that Jamaica was one of the 50 states. The rest of us, international school, so many nationalities represented, had to correct him. I've met a lot of the very smart Americans, but he was not one of them. I used to work for a guy who convinced one of the secretaries that naugahyde came from an animal called a naugahog. He also told her about hill cows that had legs that were shorter on one side so they could stand level on the side of a hill. She never questioned what would happen if they stood facing the other way. When windmills spin, they have angular momentum, but there's a law of conservation of angular momentum. You can't just get it from nowhere. So where does it come from? The Earth. Windmills take away the angular momentum from the Earth. Once windmills get too strong, they will have sucked away all the Earth's rotational angular momentum, and the Earth will stop spinning even more, and they'll suck up the angular momentum from the solar system. The Earth will stop orbiting the sun. Instead, it will just fall straight into the sun, and we will all die. So much for preventing global warming. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk, brought to you by the fossil fuel industry. That every traffic light was monitored by people, and they would just add a couple of seconds at the crosswalk if you were crossing on foot and needed a little extra time. When I said that was not at all how crosswalks worked, she said that she'd been on a tour of a city facility and saw the traffic control area with their TVs, and they were 100% monitoring pedestrian traffic in this way. There was a guy at my uni who would tell any freshman who asked that he was studying plant psychology. When asked for more info, he told them that his thesis had a focus on training cacti with light stimulus so they could be used as security. They all believed him. He single-handedly started a trend of convincing the first years that you were studying a crazy fake degree. My girlfriend was told she can die putting her fingers in the mouth while yawning. She must be like 3-5 years old when her mom told her. I told her she can't die of that when she was like 27. She didn't believe me, so I showed it to her. After that, there was a joke between us for around a year, putting finger in the mouth of each other when yawning, not in public. Went to high school with a girl who, in high school, believed that when you eat spoiled food, maggots would grow in your stomach. Treatment for stomach maggots: doctors putting a gerbil up one's anus so that the poor creature could crawl up the poop chute, into the stomach, eat the maggots, and be removed by the doctor that inserted it. I had to explain how so many parts of this idea were impossible. I'm 28 years old from England, and I managed to convince a coworker that I was a door gunner on a helicopter in Vietnam. I used to basically tell him scenes from films like Full Metal Jacket etc., or just say stuff like "you don't know man, you weren't there," or "I don't like talking about it too much." He genuinely believed me for about a year and a half when another CO worker finally told him the truth. A girl I worked with replied that of course it will rain in Korea tomorrow because it rained in Canada yesterday, like the clouds never dissipate and just move across continents and oceans. Also, she thought espresso came from people who stuck a needle in the bean and sucked out the stronger coffee juices. That's why it's stronger ... more concentrated. I met someone who wholeheartedly believed that H2O was the most harmful chemical out there. It would kill you if you ingested the tiniest bit, burn off your skin, fry your innards, and essentially cause the world's woes. She ranted about the deadly H2O conspiracy and pitied the ignorance of the general public who were unknowingly poisoning themselves. In that same conversation, she told me that hydrotherapy was changing her life for the better, that she had never felt so purified and healthy as she did after a pure water cleanse. She told me that pure water would cure my chronic illness, and pitied my, and the general public's, ignorance regarding the health benefits of pure water. In 7th grade, some kid in my class didn't believe that narwhals were real and legitimately thought that they were mythical creatures like unicorns. Like he was having a full-blown argument screaming at me that I was in fact the stupid one for believing they exist. When I showed him a picture on Google, he said it was CGI and not real. Sometimes there is this phenomenon of a red moon, and I saw one while I was in a summer camp in Greece. I didn't know why the moon was red, and some guy explained that it was only red because the Greek government puts a tarp over the sky. After multiple other campers and I asked him if he was joking, he always said that he was dead serious. To be fair, I believed some of the weirdest pseudo-spiritual fanatic shit in my mid-teens, that lasted maybe 3/4 of a year, which I can sum up as that I wasn't holy enough for good things to happen in my life, and the smallest sin would bring bad luck onto me and I'd not be able to have things happen the way I wanted. This way I feared that watching Harry Potter movies would deny me from being happy or with the girl I wanted, because, you know, there's magic in them. Talking to actual priests, among others, helped me get off that. But it got to a point where I'd almost hurt myself for not being good enough. During COVID, a close family member believed that they could get it wirelessly through the phone. They refused to even call my aunt and uncle during Thanksgiving because they both had it then. We tried telling the close family member that they, in fact, could not catch COVID from a phone call, but they were stubborn about it, going so far as to only text for like 2-3 months. My ex-GF believed Protestantism was Christianity and Catholicism were two separate religions and not two branches of the same religion. I don't know if she's been enlightened or not, but it does come across as a very weird thing to believe, and I have no idea where it comes from. She was brought up an atheist like I was, so it's not like her family were the sort to make out Catholicism wasn't proper Christianity, and even if it was, it is a bit of a weird thing for Protestants to say, as they are usually quite aware of the origins of their branches of Christianity. Protestantism was Christianity and Catholicism were two separate religions and not two branches of the same religion. Lots of Americans still believe this, and whenever talks of religion comes up, look at the comments on Reddit, and it always comes up as Christianity versus Roman Catholicism, as if they are not Christians at all. It's very bizarre. It's very fun to track where misinformation comes from and how it evolves. In this case, it comes from an idea to have vaccines include some harmless detectable chemical signature in the blood so that refugee children's vaccination history can be checked, for their own health, even if those kids lack any papers whatsoever. I've heard a similar branch of the black people come from Cain's story. One thought is that the mark God left on Cain was his skin color changing to be black. Apparently, some people who were told slavery is bad would say that Cain was a murderer and God made him black, so all these black people are his descendants and thus should be enslaved. I've never heard anyone said this to me, but one of the pastors in a church I used to attend told my youth group this. I'm unsure if those who use the excuse of Cain's mark as they're okay to enslave others practiced Christian ideology, or just used the excuse to try and get Christians and others off their backs. A longtime girlfriend's mom and dad had both spent time in the U.S. Army, including a few years living on a base in Germany. One day the mom reminisced aloud about how friendly the people in Frankfurt had been, and attributed it to how closely we'd fought together against the British in World War II. My girlfriend, her dad, a West Point grad, and her little brother were beyond despondent, and out of respect for them, I have never repeated this story to another soul until now. The owner of the business I worked for a few months ago fully believes Trump is still president, Biden, Clinton and Pence are actually dead, and thought the USA was going dark on April 3, 2021 because it was a countdown, April 3, 2021. She actually took all her money out of the bank just in case, took that day off of work because she was scared, and sent an email to her employees warning us and telling us what to do when it happens. Fucking nut job. Where I live, it is common to describe drunk drivers as being 2x over the legal limit or whatever the case is. A person I know had a license type that required him to have no alcohol in his body to drive. He thought that because his legal limit was 0, and 0x any number is still 0, he had found a loophole that allowed him to drink and drive. My dad always tells a story about how he had a teacher in high school, and that teacher's mom was from Florida. She apparently thought in places where it snowed, all the snow fell at once, like, if there were 2 feet of snow in a day, she thought it was like bang. And a giant, 2-foot-thick blanket of snow fell to the earth all at once. Also, my dad knew a woman who thought that everything on TV was live, in the moment, even commercials. She'd watch a rerun of a game show she had already seen and get mad at the contestants for getting an answer wrong, because they had already learned that it was wrong the last time they were asked that. This woman though was a Mennonite, like most people in my town, including me unfortunately, so the complete and utter stupidity isn't totally unexplainable. Used to work for an Italian guy driving a flatbread and doing deliveries. His name was Mario. I tried to convince everyone I trained that his brother Luigi was a much bigger asshole than him, so you better stay on his good side. A few fell for it. One of them I also managed to convince him that he had to tighten the straps on the truck until they rang out a G note when you flicked them. He flicked those straps every load for like 3 weeks before someone told him it was bullshit. It's surprising how little basic astronomy knowledge people have. Over the years I found, lots of people don't know how many planets are in the solar system. They think the moon is the only natural satellite there is. No other planet have a satellite. They don't think there's other stuff in the universe except for the solar system. Some people may change their mind when you point out stars, some don't. They don't understand what a galaxy is. One of my former co-workers fully believed that 8,000 years ago the world was surrounded in a big water bubble. This kept oxygen in and allowed the people from the Bible to live much longer than we do now. Then the flood happened, which was this bubble bursting and falling back to Earth, and now we don't live as long because of this bubble being gone and we have oceans from all the water. You should have another baby because you might get a girl this time, and what difference would one more baby make? This was from the mother of one of my 4-year-old son's friends. I don't even know this woman well enough to know her name. She just presumed I was planning on having another child because I only have 2 sons. When I corrected her that I'm being sterilized soon, she tried to convince me to have one more baby before I get sterilized. Guy from work. The German state isn't real. It's actually a limited liability corporation, made by the US after WW2 to keep us from rising again. Also, the Holocaust couldn't have happened, because Germany supposedly didn't have the capacity to kill so many people. I didn't even know what to say to that when he told me that shit. Flat Earther classmate, BTW, one of the teachers got into debate with her and after show bunch of proofs. The teacher asked the student did she understood her and did she agree with her. The classmate said that she listened to, but doesn't agree. Then the teacher asked her to repeat some of her proofs. My classmate shut up, and sorry for the bad English. I was at a party with a guy I served with at this restaurant who claimed he didn't believe in dinosaurs, not for religious reasons, but because he'd never seen one before. The group talking pointed out some obvious flaws in his reasoning, but he kept his ground, saying they could fake evidence, there's no way they could know a bone's age, and that he's never seen one before. We dropped it cause he was starting to get annoyed and chalked it up to substance. Party talk, but sure enough a week or 2 later during work he came back with the same arguments. Mind blown. In college I took an intro to data science type class, It was mainly about RStudio and the basics of predictive analytics. I sat next to a random girl during the lectures and we would talk about the class content and the projects. One day, the professor was talking about the changes to the field and worded it like the evolution of data science. The girl turned to me and said, "Isn't it crazy how some people actually believe in evolution?" I laughed a bit, assuming she was joking, but she had a dead serious face, so I asked, "Wait, do you not?" And she responded with, "Do you?" She then pulled out her phone and sent me a link to an article with a few bad arguments against evolution, with each one having a keyword and then posing questions that were pretty easily answered with a basic understanding of evolution. The first letters of the keyword spelled out some other word, but I can't remember what it was, nor can I find the article again. One in particular I remember was symbiosis. It asked how it was possible for a specific species of honeybees to exist near a specific species of flowers because the bees use the pollen as their main food source and the flowers had no way to self-pollinate and relied fully on the bees to spread their pollen. It claimed that this was proof of a grander design because neither of these species could have existed independently. I explained that this was actually a great argument for evolution, as the ancestors to those bees likely randomly evolved the ability to use the pollen, and it was the flowers that produced more pollen at the cost of the ability to spread that pollen who were able to reproduce better. Thus, as more of those flowers spread, the bees that were able to use pollinate and bred more, creating a fully symbiotic relationship. She didn't really respond to that, but I don't think I convinced her at all. I had found her moderately attractive, but after that conversation, I couldn't really see her the same way. We still talked occasionally about the class and projects, but never anything else, and we fully lost touch after it ended. That being named Johnny was a sin. There's a part of the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" that goes, "My name's Johnny and it might be a sin, but I'll take your bet." I instantly associated the name with being a sin, not making bets with the devil. This made me think kids named Johnny were sons of devil worshippers. I was a very dumb kid. A guy I knew in high school thought that all women have their periods at the exact same time and for the exact same length of time. Reading between the lines, his mom and sisters were all on birth control to alleviate the symptoms of something, maybe endometriosis, and their periods had synced up. So he thought every woman on the planet had synchronized periods every month, and he was the only gay in school to know which week was the week. Blew his mind when he overheard another girl ask me for middle off schedule, and I had to explain that Shark Week is not synchronized. My friend and a die-hard right-wing Republican who thinks Trump is getting back in office, he comes up with the new date every time we talk. If it's not Dec 1, it's Jan 20. If it's not Jan 20, it's February 1st. If it's not February 1st, it's March 15th. If it's not March 15th, it's April 20th. If it's not April 20th, it's June 10th. If it's not June 10th. Fucking stop already, it's not happening. To be fair, they were accepting what the locals told them the pronunciation was. It's like asking a foreigner how to pronounce their name and trusting them to tell you the truth. Saying, "Well, it's English," doesn't mean much when you consider how many different ways letter combinations are pronounced because of their origin. Keep in mind, my husband is not a bright man, but he is smart in many other ways that don't have to do with mundane things. Let's start with the two most memorable. I'm 6 months pregnant. He won't have sex with me since finding out I was a month preggo. I'm exasperated because horny and preggo and sex makes me feel loads better. I thought it was cause of way I looked big. Nope. His unit convinced him that if we had penetrative sex, he would spearhead the baby's skull with his manhood, or that our baby's hand would magically just worm all the way down and grab his wiener. Got mad when I started laughing. My kid started kicking too, and explained to him he can't actually do that. Next 2 months were great. Next, I worked with a guy. Let's name him Bob. I worked the weekends with Bob on the evening shift, checking in guests. Got to know Bob pretty well. Talking about him with my husband one night, my husband, no joke, thought Bob and I were having an affair. I started laughing before I could stop myself. Big mistake on my part. He walked away. We finally calmed down and I told him that no, Bob and I aren't having an affair. Asked him why he thought that. My husband's answer: it's because you talk politics and stuff. I have tried to talk politics and other subjects with my husband and they don't interest him much. Okay, cool. So, I move on to a different topic. Usually gets him going a million miles an hour. Told Bob about this confrontation the next week. We had a good laugh. He asked, so politics get you all hot and bothered? Huh? My answer: someone mentioned Donald Trump around me. How the hell did you think the pool got filled?